the Chief Marketing Officer of Pegasystems. We're a technology company, publicly traded, based here in beautiful Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to ask questions, and whoever has a good answer, let it fly. All right. So the first question is the digital ecosystem made up of the publisher, the consumer, and the brand. Is the digital ecosystem broken? I noticed that there are, Randall Rothenberg jumps up and down when anyone wants to change it. Oh, you're going to do the ad blocking, and everyone's defending something. Is it so great? Or is there need for a radical change? What do you guys think?
Well, I think the ecosystem is what it is, and I think brands need to figure out how to manage themselves through that ecosystem in a thoughtful way. I think one of the things that we heard a lot about today is about Facebook and Google and all these platforms that have emerged. I think the reality is that we as brands need to spend more time on investing in the customer journey across platforms and across other channels in a lot more thoughtful way than we have in the past. I was surprised at how little we use the word customer today. I was shocked at that. We talked a lot about advertising and campaigns and things like that, and I think that mindset really has to change dramatically as we move forward.
I would agree. I think it's not so much about something being broken. Things are going to emerge. People are going to jump on whatever the next thing comes out, or they're not going to jump on it, right? People will do what people will do. It's up to the brands and the marketers to figure out how to navigate that ecosystem. And I heard something earlier about advertising being led by whatever media inventory is available, and I think that's part of the broken part, if you will. I think that we do need to look at the customer, and the guy that was talking about videos and targeting to the interests. That's what the data is supposed to tell us is how to do a better job of targeting to the interests.
So I'm going to slightly disagree with you guys. I would say it's fundamentally broken on a couple levels. One is a symptomatic sort of classification, I would say, and the other is more sort of deep within the legacy of media and how advertising started. I promise this won't be too long an answer, but I've always been in media, where the quantified self, this notion of people opting in to measure aspects of their heart rate or their sleep patterns, or the Nike Plus, which has been around for 10 years already. It's not new, and people like to do it. And it feels like some people who are like sports nuts, if they don't actually measure their output or their workout, it's like it didn't happen. So consumers are totally happy to quantify the hell out of themselves, but the quantified object, that's a different story. What that means is when you, the consumer, are being quantified by somebody else without your explicit permission. So that doesn't work at all. And I think the symptom, and the way you see that getting pushed back on, and consumers have been aware for a while that we do retargeting, and retargeting is partially effective, and there's no one. I don't think it's a privacy issue. I think it's sort of a user experience issue. To your point, there's two grievous sins I think that were committed in the buy side's and the publishing side's acceptance of the buy side's insistence on more and more data. One is we made the experience of the digital experience shittier. With some notable exceptions. Is a reason why, speaking of exceptions, why Google and Facebook get about 40% of all digital ad revenue. We made it worse. And the other thing is you treated the person like an object. And the consumer has way more options, way more control than ever before. And so what they'll do, and also going way back, consumers would, as soon as we could avoid ads from the beginning of media, we did as consumers, right? When we had a monolithic media sort of situation where you had 3 channels, you couldn't do much. You had to watch an interruptive sort of 30-second spot. As soon as we got remote controls, we could switch channels, and everybody did. And so we put more ads into TV. And then we got the DVR, so you could skip ads, and people skip ads. As soon as you can skip an ad, you will, unless you actually like it. And so it kind of gets into how we define advertising. Ad blocking is the obvious theme for today, part of it. That's on the rise. It went up, I think, 40% year over year. And it's huge, and it's just a way not only to get around bad ads, but bad experiences. And I think you're going to see an increasing flight away from these heavily mediated, friction-filled experiences into ones that are frictionless and delightful. and where there's still a place for marketing, like messaging apps. That's the thing. And it's going to have to make all of us rethink how brands communicate with users, because consumers have the control in this equation, although they're not really getting the full value for it, I'd say.
Good. So the content doesn't happen really for free. Everyone, the consumer is, and Mozilla talks about the free and open internet. Is there a free lunch? And then I know people were talking before, the Globe, about charging for content. Is there a free lunch, and how does that work, you guys think?
No, there's no free lunch.
There is no free lunch. I mean, the bottom line is that the reason some people are willing to pay $1 a day for content is because they want good content. And, yes, there are people who want to discover content and find alternative free sources, but there's a bunch of crap on the internet too. And, we as consumers avoid that like we avoid, or try to avoid it, like we try to avoid ads. So...
Consumers will pay for content, right? They're paying for Netflix, they're paying for Spotify, they're paying for HBO.
Content they want.
Content they want, yeah. So I think there's a...
By the way, when I said pay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean necessarily paying with cash. I meant paying with having to watch an ad or some sort of...
Right,
or paying with a tweet. Or
paying with something.
Yeah.
Right, if brands underwrote or have underwritten content to get at the people they want to buy their things, right? That's sort of like the exchange and the whole... But I think technology and content and media are at this sort of tipping point where it used to be that the mode of advertising was you could make a delightful 30-second spot and it would be a broadcast piece and it would speak at or to the person, and maybe it resonated, maybe it didn't. That hasn't changed in a lot of advertising. We've gotten better at targeting people, but it hasn't essentially changed. But it's not been a communication. So like we're at this moment where we actually have, and so that media experience sort of persists. Like we put ads into content to reach a person, but and then people didn't really have conversations with brands. It was hard to start a conversation if they weren't a customer, right? But now we have this place where the computing power of mobile and the fact that we have these sort of layers of the mobile stack that are getting more rarefied. Like mobile apps it's almost a dead space unless you're really one of the top 200 or 300 mobile apps, because the top 20 developers get half of the revenue from that store. So people are focusing now on these hugely scaled environments like messaging. I think WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, between them, this was talked about last week, people send 60 billion messages a day between those two apps, which is a huge amount of, obviously a large number. So there's massive scale in these environments that now allow for communication, and we've never really had communication directly between brands and consumers. And I think that's the thing that's interesting now. Because as soon as you can communicate with a brand or it can communicate with you, there's a different kind of value exchange that's possible. It doesn't rely on a 30-second ad spot.
I took your question a little differently in that I think that we're still in the early days of the value exchange with the consumer, the customer, in exchange for content. I think as you heard from the journalists on the stage before us, they're great content, people aren't buying. You can find news content pretty easily today on the web, and I think I can find most content easily. Some may annoy me to get it, some may make me do things, but I can probably get most stuff for free. I think as brands, we're learning that value exchange and how to structure those experiences across with the right customers, and I think we've got a long way to innovate there, and I think there's some real exciting opportunities to innovate there, but I think we're early on.
I'm going to take it a little bit differently, because I think that different brands should tackle this engagement or conversation with consumers question differently. I think there are brands that I would never give a crap to engage or have a conversation, like Raid. Like, it either kills the bugs or it doesn't. And I'm not going to be loyal to them on Facebook or want to have a conversation about cockroaches, but yet I'm going to buy the damn Raid because I need it, right? So I think that a lot of brands are dumb about trying to be engaging and having conversations when in reality it's a different value that the customer wants. And that's a big part of figuring out the ecosystem is in what way does that customer want to engage or not with the brand, and what kind of information do they actually want from the brand.
Was raid a metaphor for politics?
Not getting into that one.
We kind of did it to ourselves with I agree with you. I think the early web, like I was doing stuff, I put banners on the web in the 90s and stuff. I think what we didn't do, we zoomed all content, which content had been free anyway up to that point, right? You didn't pay for radio, you didn't pay for TV mostly, except for cable. It had been free. We thought, okay, it'll be free ad support on the web, and obviously that didn't work quite as well. It's still a dominant, obviously, revenue stream, but there was inside the protocol for HTTP, I believe, or TCP/IP, there is a place there for micropayments to occur. But micropayments never became a thing. It could have been part of every browser, right? Where you're not gonna. I don't want to sign up for $25 a month for the Wall Street Journal, just like I don't want to spend $100 for all these cable channels that are shit that I'm not going to watch. But I will gladly pay 10 cents or 15 cents for that piece of content I want, because I know who wrote it, I know what brand it's coming from, and it's very valuable. We never, and that's a behavior we never put in front of people. And that's kind of the problem. I'm not going to swipe my credit card or re-identify myself to do it, because that's just painful.
That's the ecosystem
Turning it
problem.
all around. Okay, so we have a question. So Mozilla invented do not track, right? So people go, yeah, I don't want ads. We all assume everything that marketers do is bad. I want to avoid it all, right? And how much of that is a legacy from the past versus what you can do today? And I used to say, consumers are one guy going to say, double track me. Here's everything about me I've ever done. Because, you know, hey, I just bought 3 BMWs in a row, and my lease is up in 2 months, and why don't you bid me out? And because the cookie says I visited a couple of performance sites, so I'm worth a little more than somebody else. But if I tell you, no, I'm worth 100 times more than everyone else. In fact, I should be having a procurement agent bid me out, right, to all the sports cars. So I'm saying, you know, can it get totally flipped around? And people were talking about the consumer being empowered. What do you guys think of that?
I think that the next bajillionaire online is going to be the person that invents an ad blocking platform that's an opt-in platform, to where you can block certain ads but allow others, and then be able to have a profile like that, that, you know, like Josh said, you know,
That's
many of
Brave.
us.
That's pretty close to Brave, Brendan Eich's.
I know it's scary, but it gives the power back to the consumer, right? And I'm saying, okay, I'm willing to quantify myself to this extent on the web, and I like XYZ brands, and you know, and I might be willing to click off a few more later on, but here's a platform that allows me to do that. I think that would be kind of brilliant.
I don't know that I see it, you know, at scale. I think there's a set of people that are your couponers, your clickers that will certainly do that. I think at a scale level, and if you're Mercedes, I don't know you want that guy that's going to let you, you know, for $10 or whatever, click on it, have your ad shown to him. I don't know. I don't know that I see that culturally going into the use pattern that I have with my limited time today. I don't want to be the curator of advertising. I want to curate content. I want to curate my time. I want efficiency. I want journeys. I want to find the things that find me. I want to go to a few trusted sources that use my data well to give me great experiences and earn the right to do the things that are going to enhance my experience. So if my bank works with Mercedes, I get that. That makes sense to me. I don't know that I want an app on my phone that I'm looking at and trying to say, well, this week I'm going to let Nike in, or next week maybe it's somebody else.
Yeah, I agree. There's a hurdle with the adoption. So it can't be like you have to sign up to a new service and then do all this shit, because that's just going to be painful. But what if it co-opted a behavior you're already doing, and it made it so, like if you're 900 million people a month use Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger has M. I don't actually have it. I don't know if it's a limited alpha, but the M is it's a human-assisted AI assistant, basically, that gets to know you personally through combination of deep learning and assistance from humans when it can't figure out what it is you want. So that thing could become like an agent in the true sense. It knows after a while, and Facebook has your identity, of course, and so it knows reliably the things you like. Facebook, I think 70% of apps are Facebook Connect enabled already. Most websites are already. So actually, if you're connected, it can kind of see everything you do and buy and like and want. And it could sort of autonomously, as your agent, go out and sort of negotiate with another bot to get to switch from BMW to Mercedes, because there is some high value consumers who would, I think, it's not just the coupon clippers, it's the people who've been driving BMWs for 3 years. Mercedes would pay a lot of money to get that person over, but all they can do is quantify in terms of ad spend and backing into some kind of CPA, which is based on the action of someone putting together a car and requesting a dealer call. I mean, that's just a terrible.
I don't know that's economical, though. I mean, I think Facebook can sell the data and maybe make some, ways to infer some of that stuff, and geo-targeting, and you can do some things
We're
like
talking
that.
2021, it says up there.
Yeah, I mean,
Look
Google's
out.
kind of doing it right now with, that's how they.
Not
that's how
individuals
they're
doing
serving- Right. I mean, Google is reading basically the content of your emails and serving those new inbox ads based on that. So it's kind of like the same thing. You're telling Google in
You're not
essence,
opting in.
No, you're not opting in, but we're
Directly.
brainstorming, right? 2021, we're brainstorming, right? It takes big ideas, but it's learning who you are, and it's automating that process for you, and then it's suggesting things that it in its infinite wisdom, things that you might like.
It's right, exactly. So if there's enough data and art, because I don't think it's just data. So if
exactly.
you took it one more level, you think people would pay for your marketing?
Consumers are paid to be.
Pay, but
be
consumers pay
marketed
to get marketing. I think they will.
Consumers
but
pay
I'll let
to
you guys
be
answer it.
consumers pay to be part of certain clubs that give them discounts and things, and part of that comes with marketing. So in some senses, they kind of already do in certain arenas, but
Well,
I mean, it sounds shocking.
it's
But
a value exchange, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
the way you're packaging it, I think absolutely. I just bought a new car, and they offered us a discount because my wife was a lawyer. She was part of the bar association. So, she pays her membership, she gets that discount.
The group buying.
I don't know that I pay to get advertising, but directly.
but you'd pay for value.
Right.
Yeah, but I think part of it is you have in your head an image of what advertising is that doesn't have to be what it is.
I think we do. I think, the average age of the primetime TV watcher is 57. The average age of somebody who streams, goes over the top, pays for Netflix, is much lower. And I spent time with a founder of ShopGene. I don't know if you guys know ShopGene. None of us are in the target demo, but it's for like 18 to 24-year-old women. And her name's Erin Yoga Sundram. She's got 500,000 followers on Instagram. And that is how you do retail now. She's fanatically devoted to responding to her fans, to using fan suggestions, and she sells clothes, and she makes money from that, but she's also producing content. She's also an influencer. That feels like a model that does work. And so when we think about, if we are talking about the future, like 5 years or 10 years from now, we're going to people will have a different idea about what advertising is, and things, it's got to be seamless, it can't be interruptive, it's got to be frictionless, has to be authentic. Those things will really matter, and privacy is not that. Privacy matters, but if I can have a secure, trusted entity that is highly scaled, like a Facebook, help me protect it and help me sort of make other connections frictionless, then I think we're going to see a very different kind of approach to, we care about things that the 24-year-olds do not give a shit about.
I think trust is the key word. So with that, here's a question I have that I never understand. So you go on Amazon, right, and it has what next logical purchase software. You like that book, so we're recommending that, right? Even if you don't like the book, the fact that they made the algorithm transparent, I go, okay, I see why you said that. I don't look at that as marketing. I look at that as a service, right? It is marketing, and if they didn't tell me why they said that, it would be more marketing. But the transparent part, to me, is so critical, and people don't do that. Now, I don't understand why people don't. Aren't more transparent in everything, and this is why I'm doing this, right? Because I think it works so well, and I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it definitely tells you, because you purchase so and so, we think you might like such and such.
You might hate it.
So you might hate
you
it,
know why.
but you appreciate that they are trying based on something you've done, and that it is transparent. I think where it gets creepy is where, like the retargeting early on was pretty creepy because people were like, why is this ad following me around?
Right.
Funny you mentioned that because I have a client that we were going to do a retargeting campaign for something, and some of the verbiage in the creative was like, oh, well, you saw us online, now watch us in action or something like that. And they were like, oh, but you're telling them we're retargeting them. And I said, don't you think they know? Consumers are pretty savvy. They know. It's better to be transparent and own up to it, and it's more authentic to say, hey, we saw you went on our website, so maybe you'll like this other thing.
Right, they know. They just want you to stop falling with that shoes ad, because they should now know that you bought those shoes already 2 weeks ago, right?
Right.
They should know that, but they don't more often than not. Or if you called the call center because you had a problem and they're targeting you 10 minutes later.
They do know it sometimes, but they want to get the credit for the purchase, so they shoot the ad out. And
Cookie bombing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay, let's see. How much time do we have? I don't have my watch. We have 20 more minutes. Well, we can do a questions in the middle, too. Let's do that. Let's just break it up. Let's go crazy here.
End of the day.
I don't know.
All right,
Did Joe
Melinda.
Mendizi give me permission to do this? Okay. All right. You ask questions, too. You ask.
You're not allowed.
Hi, Melinda Krieger from Salesforce. So don't we have opt-in advertising already? It's called email and push notifications and SMS.
Yeah, people out
Yes, but it's terrible. Mostly.
Seems to be doing better lately.
Email is fine. I think, well, how many of you guys get a lot of work spam that you opted in for? So yes, are you saying the behavior is there or the actual end result is please?
I'm saying people are asking to receive information from you. So if I'm that car buyer that you've been talking about and I go on your website and I'm like, oh, and the car buyer says, here, get, this, I don't know, wallpaper or this, all the specs about this car, or, stay in touch with us and we'll tell you when there's a promotion. You're opting in for advertising.
Yeah, that's the closest to a one-to-one conversation is through email that you can come. But I would say that very few people will go into a completely unknown brand and opt in just for the hell of it. So most people are opting into brands that they either have already purchased, have an interest in purchasing, have some affinity towards, or want to get some sort of a special
Offer,
from.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. The behavior is there. We opted for stuff. I think the challenge with that is that we have a sort of siloed media approach, mostly technically. So you opt in for the email and you keep getting emails, but really would be wonderful if, because we all have phones, we all do different things, we're in different modes during the day. You don't always want to get an email, but you would like BMW to know that now you're doing something in Facebook, or you're my favorite example, or you're searching for something, or can they somehow connect the fact that you opted in over here to modulate and modify the experience and behavior over here, and maybe push you something in an environment where email is getting, we talk about these things replacing each other, but they work together. Push makes sense, email makes a lot of sense in some environments, in some modes, and it doesn't in others. Notifications through your OS make more sense. So it doesn't seem like it's very intelligent across media.
We're starting to match our email opt-ins across different social platforms. We're starting to do that on LinkedIn and Facebook and different channels. It's early. The numbers aren't great in terms of overlap, but I think that's going to grow over time. And it's not perfect by any means, but I think it's an evolution.
And there's definitely marketing platforms, marketing automation platforms out there that try to bridge those gaps and try to bridge the gap between CRM and email and web behavior and social channel behavior. I think that we're going to see more and more of that. I'm sure you agree, coming from where you come from. So yeah, I think the better job we can do with that, the more value we can provide to the consumer.
Yeah, Marketo's not a new company, right? They've been doing marketing automation, personalization forever. And it does exist, but this is a little different, I think, what we're talking about, in the sense that it's not just automation at scale, and getting your LiveRamp to help you take your emails and make them useful in Facebook. It's because we've been doing that forever. Like, you find one data key that's same between that data set and that data set, and then you got a match, and then what's your match rate, et cetera. That's not new. What is new, though, is personalization at scale that actually feels personal. That's very different. So if you have transparency, if you're opting in and saying, yes, I would like to see, and I think Amazon's gotten pretty good at it, but it took a long time. Netflix had to have the Netflix prize to get better at it. It's expensive. It requires computational abilities, it requires deep learning, it requires a lot of data science, it requires technologies that we didn't have then. But if you were in some kind of environment where you sort of knew what you like, and you were getting highly, so personalization at scale is really, really hard in certain environments because you can tell it's not a human. But even that's getting better. Like when I talk to Alexa, the Amazon Echo product, it actually kind of seems like it's learning. And I think my kids would be unhappy if she went away or sort of died. You know, so that's the big challenge. Like not just automation, personalization. So it's John
Totally
versus
agree.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, the perfect size for a segment is 1. You know, eventually, there'll only be ads to one person at a time. There will be no, it'll be different and customized. And that's why I say it won't feel like advertising. I don't think advertising will disappear. It'll just be, content that I want. Anyway, Joe, I think you had a
I'm
question.
deferring to Sarah.
Okay, Sarah. There we go.
So, I mean, in the simple terms, aren't we talking about, because it's not simple, aren't we talking about omni-channel? I mean, it's not just recognition in the digital channels and, personalization, all that is really important, but it's recognizing your customers wherever they may be. I mean, I remember having this discussion a long time ago at a big bank, we both know. And it's shocking how many companies out there have no idea who their customer is if they're doing business with them over in one division and they encounter them in another. I mean, to me, that's just like,
But that's
the
where the
big one
world
that's
needs to
gotta get
connect,
cracked.
right? That's that convergence that you're talking about.
Right.
We lack the infrastructure in most large organizations to connect the advertising team and the CRM team. They don't even talk in most cases, and they're not thinking of those journeys as holistic. They're thinking of them as separate ones. You have the call center guys doing churn and retention, and they're bonused on that, and then you have the ad guys driving acquisition, and the two shall never meet. And that's what's changed in our world. The customer doesn't give a shit. They don't care that they have 3 products. They don't care that it's a different group. They want to deal with them the way they want to be dealt with, and you need to have that context today to do this the right way. It's not just about a conversion of an impression. It's about a relationship that you want to manage and how you want to treat them and be able to connect those dots, and I think the sophisticated companies are the ones that are going to be able to do that better. And I think to your point, the technology is evolving. It's hard to do, but it's evolving, and I think there's ways to do it today.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You see CRM, legacy CRM, we see it with our clients. CRM systems getting replaced by DMPs. That seems to be the mode du jour of doing it, like have Adobe or Crux help you link those things together. But it's a fairly labor-intensive process and not cheap. But I think you're exactly right. Like that, it's consumers on the advertising side, like consumers don't care how you're structured in your business units. They couldn't care less, and don't make them care, or you lose them. On the advertising side, we've had this sort of distinction over time, separation between creative, media, and product. And so many products are digital, and so much of the other two are digital too. That's also something they couldn't care less about. When they see your beautiful Facebook ad, and then with a lovely copy, and it's really smartly positioned because you're in that moment, you want that thing, and you click on it, and you go to some shitty non-mobile optimized site because some other team did that. That's when you lose them. Like, so you're exactly right. You said at the beginning, like, it's about the consumer has control, and they'll take that control to places where there's no advertising at all, and that's what's going to be really bad. Like a Telegram or a secure environment, like, where there's no ads. So let's just start thinking like them. Agencies talk like that, but like actually think about it and start coupling back together things that make that experience wholesome.
There was a woman on a panel earlier that said, and I don't want to butcher her quote, but I'm going to paraphrase it and say, it said something like, it's really hard to justify this for an ad campaign. And you're right, if that's the way you're looking at it, you can't do it. And it's ludicrous to me if you're the CMO of that company and that's how you'd be thinking about, journey management and really the relationships that you have and valuing them by a campaign. I think that's the fundamental problem that has to shift by 2021.
Can you do that? Is the weak link the cookie? Or is it going to have to be replaced with browser-based tracking because the browser sees everything you've ever done and can, obviously is a lot more robust? Is that the weak link in this?
Cookie's been replaced already. It's been replaced by Facebook, Google, Amazon, Alibaba, and the data companies. Those are the likely enablers of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'd like to start by answering your question and then posing a new one. So you asked if consumers would pay for marketing. Consumers pay for 100% of marketing, right? The cost of goods and services contains marketing. So advertising and marketing is an extremely inefficient industry because if you got rid of it, you'd lower the cost of the goods and services. But we need it to enable people to do things. So earlier today, I talked about this event. I was part of DMAP with ARF and MIT 16 years ago, and the first part of it was they talked about the filters that would evolve in the future, and those conversational sales bots you're talking about are the first generation of those filters. The second thing that other epiphany they said was that in the future, consumers and brands will have bifurcated or stratified models, in which case sometimes the consumer will see advertising. Sometimes they won't see advertising, depending on what type of consumer they are and the data we have about them, what value they have as a consumer. In other words, like to Sarah's point and to your point, it is omnichannel, it's multivariant, it's a journey, and it's not one thing. And this is a question, but it's more of an observation, which is we often look at things as one thing when we're talking in panels or as trade journalists writing about it. And I think that is the biggest problem I've observed in this industry, which is it's multivariant. There's lots of different ways. So I'm not sure what the question is in there, but you kind of get where I'm going.
I think I'm amazed to sort of feed off your question or your statement that we're still haven't cracked the code on attribution. Yeah. I'm amazed as I talk to CMOs and many of them, don't even, they're not even on their list, which is just mind-blowing to me given. And I'm not saying it's cracked today, because I think it's complex and hard to do. But man, that's one of my number one things that I work on every day is figuring out how I can connect dots to make better decisions. And I think that's an industry that our industry is hopefully in the next 5 years will take a lot more seriously.
Do you mean like multi-touch attribution, knowing that this person saw 5 ads before the actual conversion event? Or do you mean attribution like across devices, by identity attribution?
All of the above. I mean, I think it's, depending on your level of sophistication and where you can get to, I think you have to know how you're looking at it. My business, our sales cycle is very long. There's a lot of people involved in it. Knowing how people interact with our brand, knowing how people interact with our content, events they go to, and all those touches, it's just hard to connect those dots. And I think that's an area that I think and I think that's consistent with other industries. I think that's an opportunity that we've got to figure out how to solve.
By the way, I think that's a very good point. I just want to say that you made, Joe, which is, because I'm thinking, TV, we're talking about this customization and the sort of business model value exchange is what helps customize. Works in TV. I can get free network. I can get cable. I can get premium. I can get pay-per-view. I can choose. And I'm not one or the other. I could be one thing 1 minute and one thing else. And that hasn't been translated. I think that's a very, very good point.
For entertainment brands. That's so well maybe for your brand.
So question, if you look out 5 years, there's really two things colliding. One is the idea that you want to segment, as one of you said, for an audience of one and find that person and pay enough for that person based on where they are in the customer journey. And the second is the way we buy media, which is sort of CPM, maximum reach, let's drive the price as low as possible. Those two are not compatible. So ultimately, which is likely to give? The idea that reach is what matters the most and price should be as low as possible, or the idea that I'm going to pay more for the guy who has the BMW and is about to buy his next one or buy a Mercedes?
I would debate that reach is always the thing a brand's going for. We have a brand, financial services brand, that's not trying to get massive reach, but reach a very specific group of people. And 100% reach for them would be within their target. But and do you think it's incompatible? Like personalization at scale is very difficult, and it's going to require a lot of continued investment in technology and data science, and large platforms. But we could pay for it. There's a model we could pay for it. I mean, CPM is maybe out of whack, but do you think fundamentally economics don't align?
By the way, can I just one thing? I think the purchase funnel, whether it exists or not, okay, let's assume it does. It's that pyramid, right? It's got to get more narrow over time, or else we're not very good at what we do. It's got to get closer to resembling the purchase pipe. It has to. Otherwise, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think
because that's the waste.
To your question, I think price has not caught up yet with value, and so people are buying across. Look, let me say it very succinctly. We believe the best way to find out what someone wants is by following them around in a very creepy way on the internet and trying to guess. And my view is the best way to find out what someone wants is by asking them. And I think we're going to see a change in model where you
Requires
can
trust.
ask in a micro way. It's not about big data, it's about nano data. And it's about finding data in moment about what someone is actually interested in. That's where the value is accrued. But if the notion is I have to buy it for 20 cents and not $1.50, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, totally true. I do think and I've been talking about it a lot, but maybe over talking it, but I do think things look a little different 5 to 10 years because there are massive platforms that have figured out identity for billions of people, right? And you can imagine them licensing that or turning that into some kind of, Facebook turned on, became a Square, or, you could do payments for anywhere you were through Facebook. You wouldn't need, so I think we have a scaled and sort of various scaled platforms that already provide a lot of what we're going to need. And I guess unfortunately, unlike the open web, these are proprietary closed environments built on proprietary closed stacks. Like the Apple OS, Android OS, these are closed things. The browser was an open thing on an open web. So we're in a different era now, and it's going to feel very different. And in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be more monopolistic, so oligopolistic in some ways. Anyway.
I think your question is interesting. I kind of think it'll figure itself out. I think you're going to get both. I think, today I can go to LinkedIn and my business and buy targeted people that I want to reach, but there's a price, right, and a scale to that. I go to the Wall Street Journal, or I can go to other demand generation, IDG, people like that. And I think the market normalizes itself based on demand, and I think that'll continue to happen based on innovation. All of those people are going to push each other to innovate and drive market share for their own businesses, and I think that's going to apply in all of the categories, those platforms that we were talking about. I think it's going to continue to evolve. The key formula there to me, though, is that I, as a marketer, need to be accountable to know the data, and I'm amazed at how poorly some marketers don't know the data and don't even have the tools and aren't even fighting for the tools to know the data, to understand the equations, and I think that's the key.
Questions? If we go back to the opt-in question, which I think was what the whole panel was originally supposed to be about, but we disposed of that very quickly. I always like that because it forces the advertiser to make it worth it for someone to do something. And essentially someone that opts in, right, you're not wasting a lot of money now going after people that aren't interested, because they said, okay, you get a white paper, you want to download it, you have to put in your information, but it self-selects somebody that's farther down the funnel. So I think it's a win-win. And then, the question is the opt-in, is that going to happen at more scale, or is it fine the way it is now, or are there these different versions of opt-in we've been talking about? What's the future of opt-in, let's say?
Best opt-in experience I can think of is when you buy a magazine. Say you were into guitars, which I was at one point in my life. You're opting into content and then to ads that feel just like content. So the ads are as valuable in some cases as the actual content, and that's like the best possible experience. And that I think could be, and that's where it's connected and it's sort of spatially adjacent. And I think with programmatic, and I had a mobile programmatic company, and we bought billions of impressions, so I'm partly to blame for this. But programmatic's kind of sort of blown away the adjacency, and so you get these groups of people. You may be on some site has nothing to do with, and the content on the site has nothing to do with the ad you're getting because you're getting targeted for some behavior that BlueKai has.
Yeah.
I think that is not helping make a great experience. But when I buy that magazine, whether it's like a runner magazine or whatever I'm into or whatever hobby you have, and the ads are a Vogue or the ads feel like content. So to me, that's the ultimate opt-in experience.
I think that opt-in is a part of probably every brand strategy to some degree, and I think you have to evaluate the different stages of it. I think that, you have to understand how your buyer wants to interact with you and be respectful of the way they want to enter their journey with you. If I want to, I just bought a car today, and there are brands that should be building their brands with me to buy my next car. Doesn't mean I want to go to a showroom. It doesn't mean I want to sign up for emails. But, would I check out the new Audi? I would, because I looked at it, but I didn't buy it. So my next car, it'd be interesting to me as I continue to watch Tesla and things like that as a consumer. And I think you've got to be respectful of that journey and be able to manage those decisions of how you engage and choose to make your content available. In my business, I ungated 99% of my content because I said, I just want people to know me. I want to build my brand, and that's where we are as a brand today. We need to get known better, et cetera. But that's a choice that a business has to make, and I think you've got to use these tactics to figure out how to build. And then when you do have something of super value, high expense, and you want to exchange, and you're at the bottom of that journey, then I think you can do it thoughtfully.
I have one more question, which is native advertising, which we haven't talked about. So 2 ways of, let's say, looking at it, right? There's, hey, wait a second, there's native, and there's editorial, and there's advertising, and you got to say what it is. The consumer wants to know. And another way of looking at it, which happens to be what I think, but is there's good and bad, and consumers don't care. There's good, fine, and there's bad. There's bad editorial and good native advertising, right? Now, there's also, right, the native advertising that tries to fool you, gets you to look at it, and then you go, man, I got suckered, right? So that's obviously not so good. But anyway, what do you guys think of that issue?
That's totally about the quality of the content, 100%. When you feel like you're reading something and you feel like, oh, it fooled me, it got me, is because at some point it became shitty content. So I think, I can't emphasize enough that question is all about the quality of the content. I think, transparency is great. We talked about that earlier. But ultimately, the consumer may not even see the little, this is an advertisement little title. If they're engaged by the content and it's good and informative or entertaining, I mean, the bottom line is no matter who you're targeting, what you're doing, it either has to be, funny or useful or informative in some way, meaning it has to be readable and high quality, because otherwise it's just, people are going to turn it off, no matter whether it's native or in a little box or,
I kind of slightly disagree in that I think it's about trust. I think if I read an article that Apple produced, and I'm a huge Apple fan, and it was, pimping their products, and I didn't know it was from them, I'd feel misled, and it would hurt my brand view of them, and I'd lose trust. And I think it's responsible for, candidly, all of us in this room and as an industry to win back the trust. There's a reason people are blocking stuff. I agree we need to improve dramatically the content quality. I'm 100% supportive of that. I think we need to reimagine our ad formats. We got to stop doing those little click boxes that make it really hard, and I click on that ad when I don't want to and I want to get out of it. We need to focus on the customer and really get them come back and figure out how we build that trust back, because I think that's why you're seeing the rise of ad blocking and things like that.
I totally agree. And it's like, how do you, if you're going to build a brand today, how would you do it? I think you'd be, like in the retail example of ShopJane, it's a lot of content, a lot of transparency, a lot of real
Authenticity, I bet.
yeah, and she embodies her brand to some extent. you want to buy the stuff because she's got it, so you feel like close to her. And many brands have become very big companies and are now, with branded content, which we do a lot of too, are now, and don't have personalities, or they have one, it's just one you don't want to be friends with because they're talking to themselves about their own problems. But I think you're right, like trust, transparency, authenticity, and it's somehow being very interesting as content. Those things have to come together, and you see it's getting much, much better, long form or short form. But I think some large brands just struggle with feeling like, knowing how to talk like an actual person to an actual person.
I think interesting content is table stakes.
Yeah.
I think it's just, that's how you got to compete. That's the bar, because you're not going to if you don't have that. And then, I think trust is such a big deal. I think you can lose that in a nanosecond. And if you choose or you do something stupid and I think to your point, talk to the people like they're human and admit you made a mistake. And, one thing to credit my old bank that I used to work at, we ran something that went bad and we said sorry, and it got more NPS. It had better brand favorability after,
Yeah.
because we said sorry.
Because they
it's just,
owned up to
exactly.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
those types of things that show you that people want to be treated like people.
But the reason we still have to talk about it is because so many and so many large brands have forgotten that and still don't do it and do deceptive.
I have a great story, which is just a really quick one. I flew back from Europe, and my flight was 2 hours late. I have a little boy, and I wanted to get home to see him, and I missed putting him to bed, bad father of the year thing. And I'm in the car service coming back from John F. Kennedy, and I'm grumpy and I'm cranky, and I get an email from KLM saying, sorry.
Yeah.
We know we wanted to get you home. Sorry, we'll do better next time. What a great email. Didn't try to sell me anything, didn't try to make it, we know we let you down today. It was so authentic, it was real, it just, the right time. That's the kind of market, that's great marketing.
That's great marketing. KLM has been widely cited for their KLM. I mean, you can think Tylenol, the cyanide scare in the 80s. Tesla, the way they buy Tesla cars, they treat you like they're not making commission. They deliver it to your house. They actually care. But you can probably name a number of examples where brands are doing things authentically like that. But it's not a huge list.
It's not a long enough list.
Great.
Has anybody heard of Beta Brands? The retailer? I mean, just talking about some of the behaviors, this could be really the marketing or brand of the future. I mean, granted, they're smaller than the Gap or those, but it begins with asking their community to vote on which items of clothing they'll make. And they actually, they get contributions or purchases ahead of time, and then it talks in a very pithy way. I mean, they just have like wildly happy and advocate customers. So it's like they built the whole brand around the community.
Love that.
Yep.
It's like the combination of empathy, love, and actual concern. It will do every brand. It'll dramatically increase their likability by consumers.
I think you can get your ID on a Nike shoe, you can start to customize products and things like that. I mean, I think that's 2021 marketing, when brands are going to let you personalize yourself and engage with them that way and make it easy to do. I imagine, I'm a big Tumi guy as an example, and certain things I'd love to design about my own Tumi bag and can't today. I mean, those are things that I think are going to happen over the next few years. And I also think that the other thing that's going to happen is the interconnectivity. I think you're going to see the API world. Why can't I use my credit card points on X instead of just a certain number of places? How can I kind of use my data where I want to be able to feed that into the infrastructure to make my experience better? I think you're going to start seeing lots of things that enable that. I was telling the Boston Globe guy, let's have Uber deliver the paper. I mean, they've got this infrastructure. They've got to figure out, how to connect and leverage something that's already going on out there. I think you're going to see lots of things like that.
Do you think, I don't know if you have time, do you think the media creatives, people producing advertising now then become sort of product people, where they're thinking about user experience is the most important thing. They have the sensitivity and sensibility to build with empathy and to be authentic, but then they need to know what API integrations exist to make their app a little bit more awesome.
They better.
I think it's the creativity in agency land. You still see these reels, and it's like creativity is fundamentally changing, and it really does. It's more of a product.
It's more, not just, I think it's just more about the things you do versus messaging.
Right.
I use my dumb bank examples, which I won't name, which you can figure out, but we worked with one of the large airlines, and the brand manager wanted to build an app for his product, which was a credit card, and the airline already has an app, and I'm like, you got to integrate. You can't build another app. We built another stupid app. I mean, it's shit like that we've got to stop. And again, if you're really thinking about the customer experience, it's got to be integrated. It's got to be able to seamlessly make that customer's life better. And I think those are the new table stakes. And in 2021, I think that it's going to be such a different game, and you're going to see, many companies aren't going to make it because they're not making that shift fast enough, candidly.
Great. Well, thank you. And with that, we'll conclude. Thanks a lot, John. Thanks, panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, MediaPost. OMA.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
Media
that
Oma.
does it for the show. Thank you all for coming out today.